One of the things I think I am horrible at on YouTube is titles of videos. I'm just not good at it. I think I can do a good thumbnail. I think I can make a good video, especially if I'm doing a story video. I can't do titles. But Drifter lately has just been getting me with his title. So this one is called Nobody Asked for Warzone 3. And I thought this was essentially perfect because with what is going on right now with Warzone, this is, I think, a lot of people's sentiment almost exactly. And I'm curious what he has to say about this one. So we're going to dive through it together and see what Drifter has to say.
Drifter here. Today, I want to talk about the rumor that Warzone 3 is coming, or maybe the rumor that Warzone 3 was coming, but is already canceled. The gameplay.
So it's definitely not already canceled, but I don't think it's necessarily that Warzone 3 was ever coming. I think it was more so that it might just Warzone as a whole might get canceled altogether because after they butchered Warzone 2, I think they'll never do that full refresh again. And I hope he gets into why they screwed up because I think there's a very big reason. And I'm guessing that's what he gets into.
Play you're seeing all around you is from the original Verdansk and maybe a little bit of Verdansk 84 in there. So in case you haven't heard, the rumor is that we won't get Warzone 3 if the Verdansk reboot fails. And I read this and I thought, Warzone 3? I didn't even know that Warzone 3 was on the menu. I also don't even know if I want to play Warzone 3. What happens to my Warzone 2 cosmetics? Will there be another engine with another unique set of bugs? If Warzone 3 doesn't have...
So he brings up the exact reason why Warzone 2 existed. If you actually think about it, yeah, they wanted to redo things and revamp the engine and all of that garbage, which didn't work. The real reason was, if you look at it, from Warzone 1 to Warzone 2, what changed? The weapons, the schematics, and everything that you unlocked in-game. They wanted a reason to get rid of it all. And to be quite honest with you, they need a reason to do it again because the game is just overly bloated. Like, having 100+ weapons in the game is just so bloated. And they need a way to deal with that, like vaulting weapons and having... They should only have, I think, between 20 and 30 weapons total within the game. To make a good meta, I think they need to do that, but you may disagree with that. And if you do, please let me know in the comments.
What happens to Warzone 2? I am deeply confused by this rumor, but so far, rumors like this have been true for the last couple of years. Call of Duty has a lot of very prolific leakers.
What was that guy doing?
I am going to try to make sense of this rumor. And the basis of it all is that Call of Duty is not doing very well right now. I think we all know that. Multiplayer numbers are approaching an all-time low. Warzone isn't doing great either. Most people kind of assume that Warzone is the largest part of the player base, but since the numbers are all smushed together in COD HQ, we don't really know for sure. The thing I do know for sure is that Warzone is expensive to maintain. Servers that run a gigantic map and support over 100 players, plus all the streaks and objects and stuff, are expensive.
If you legitimately think Call of Duty isn't making any money, you're delusional. Like, that's not the case. The player numbers are down. They're still making a buttload of money, but I don't think it's necessarily Warzone that's making them that money anymore. That's the interesting part.
And I also know that there's a tremendous amount of development time that goes into fixing bugs. I know you're going to make jokes about that in the comment. Adding new content. I know you're going to make jokes about the microtransactions and major map updates. I know you're going to make jokes about it being delayed. But even these things, if done improperly or slowly, are still very expensive.
Oh man, remember the containment protocol?
The economics of Warzone only makes sense if the player count stays really high. So if Warzone 2 doesn't have enough players, Activision is going to lose money every month just by maintaining the product and keeping it live. And
I don't think it's at
a certain point, it goes over into the sunk cost fallacy, and it's just logical to axe the entire game mode, to just sort of cut your losses on Warzone and move on. So I assume that Activision's logic is that if the Verdansk reboot can't make Warzone 2 profitable again, then they won't outlay the initial investment for Warzone 3. But then here's the weird thing for me. I'm not sure that I'm looking forward to Warzone 3. Warzone 1 was incredibly fun, but it got less fun with successive updates. It was starting to kind of get less fun for me about the time that Caldera and Fortune's Keep came out.
Yep.
But I still prefer those late-stage Warzone 1 maps over Warzone 2. I didn't care for the movement in Warzone 2. That's both the sliding and stuff from Modern Warfare.
So I think like the biggest complaints with Warzone 2 was this just slowing down the game as a whole, the AI being in it, the visual clutter, the way that like weapons bounced and everything like that. I think the simplicity of the movement, the way everything worked in Warzone 1 was just part of its magic. Like, it didn't take a genius to just hop in there and play. And that, in conjunction with everyone being at home, it was just like an easy pickup, play it, the most simplistic battle royale out there. And like all of that combined was really what made it.
Warfare 2 and the Omni movement. Didn't like the new map that much, didn't like the bag system, didn't like the overabundance of zip lines. And I think Warzone 2 generally sped up the pace of the game a little bit too much for me.
It's very much so slowed it down at first, and then it tried to speed it back up. And then in like Modern Warfare 3 era, that's when we get like the speed up again to it.
A little bit like crazy TDM instead of tactical smart plays. And it was also incredibly buggy at launch, but we all know that got patched up over the last couple of years. It ended up being in a quite nice position until Treyarch imported the Omni movement, and then we got all the old bugs back. But in a short series of time, I think all the new old bugs, or the old new bugs, have been fixed by now. But late stage Warzone 2 is still following this trend, and even like the back half of Warzone 2 feels worse than the front half, primarily because of the Omni movement. There's a lot of bugs, there's network inconsistencies, even popular streamers like Swag and Nadeshot are just straight up quitting and refusing to play the game because it's in such a bad state. And the pace of the game has...
Do I have an article to cover in TWR this week? Because apparently Valorant is actually in a worse place with cheaters than Call of Duty, and they're just not talking about it. And some pros came out this week and said, whoa, Call of Duty used to have the gold standard. During the Caldera specifically, Call of Duty had the gold standard for anti-cheat, which we never felt that way. So this whole cheating thing, I no longer think is just I think all games on PC are screwed right now. I think that's what's going on.
Shifted to just being team deathmatch for the first half of the map.
Yeah, and this
a lot of ways to come back.
Right. It doesn't feel like a battle royale anymore. And then you try to survive
for the last few minutes and do crazy movement god, advanced sliding, rolling, pretending to be a body plays. I don't know. It's all very weird to me now. But given this trend of continually decreasing battle royale quality, why would I want to play Warzone 3? I know that releasing Warzone 3 is probably an attempt by the developers to do good things, like getting closer to a universal engine, or maybe just a better performing engine, more players, bigger maps or something, or a longer lasting carry forward system for the cosmetics. But I realistically think that it would just be another launch with its own unique set of problems that would then need to be sorted out over the span of about a year to maybe 18 months.
I think the biggest problem is every single year, any sort of progress that is made into Warzone is reset with the update. And it is abundantly clear that Warzone 1 at some point should have just separated into its own game and done its own thing, separate from multiplayer. And I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're scared to do that. And I think that's a huge problem.
Months. And I don't really want to go through that process again. I don't want to be the guinea pig for that. But speaking of cosmetics, if Warzone 3 does release, what happens to my Warzone 2 cosmetics? You may remember that Warzone 1 was supposed to last forever, and then we lost everything when they shut it down and we migrated to Warzone 2. So I have to ask, will that happen again? Because not as much as last time, but this time I do have cosmetics on Warzone 2 that I really don't want to lose. And in my brain, it's mostly the Art the Clown skin, but it's still something that I paid for that I don't want to lose. And I think that if Warzone 3 doesn't allow for importing of Warzone 2 cosmetics, then I'm not going to play it. I'm not going to let people fool me a second.
Which, this is wild. Like, I actually think about this for a second. Like, take a breath. Think about this. What he's saying here is he wants his cosmetics to be carried over to Warzone 3, right? Well, what is one of the biggest complaints right now with Call of Duty? Like, one of the biggest ones, the unrealistic skins, the things like Nicki Minaj, things along those lines that people are sick of seeing anti-realism in their game. And then the bloat of the game with all the weapons and all the attachments and everything like that. Well, the only way to fix one of those things is to get rid of all of those things. But then you're going to have people like Drifter, and I'm not saying he's wrong for this at all, who are like, well, what happens to everything that I bought? So this is a lose, 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 lose situation. I don't know how you fix this. I don't know how you make the game more realistic with having all these skins in there. I don't get how you can actually make it so everything carries over. But at the same time, you reset. There's no answer. And they screwed themselves when they started releasing bundles that were brand new operators that didn't fit in with the game, and that were weapon blueprints on specific weapons and not just camos that could be used on all weapons. Because if you were buying camos, you could just import that to every weapon that you ever release. Therefore, when you reset your weapons the next year, like when, for example, when Black Ops 7 comes out, you can get rid of all of the previous weapons, and then all of those camos that you earned and bought can then be used on future weapons. That's the proper way to do that. But they haven't done that. So they've screwed themselves, and I don't know how they fix that.
Second or third time in a
wrong
row.
button.
That's just silly. Overwatch 2 got this right. Everybody was able to import the vast majority of their cosmetics. So I don't see why we can't do that in Warzone 3. Perhaps a more important question.
Also, skin-wise, like operator skin-wise, is for them to have less operators, much less, and the skins be just for those operators. And then have a toggle whether you not want realism to be on or off, and there's certain skins that are considered realistic and ones that are considered not. But yeah, have way less operators. Like have your Task Force 141 operators and your bad guys, and then have your skins for just them.
Question is, what happens to Warzone 2 if there is no Warzone 3? Does that mean that Activision will just maintain?
And then when you get a new character, like say for example Troy Marshall, that character then matters more. Because when like it used to be like one new character per season, and then it was 2 new characters per season. Then it was like 3 or 4. It's just so many.
In Warzone 2, as is, indefinitely. We get to keep the maps we've got, the guns we've got, the modes we've got, but not much new happens. Maybe just cosmetics and skins. Maybe it doesn't get a whole lot of new content, but it still stays up, free, available. It's a free-to-play Call of Duty experience. Maybe the servers get worse. I don't know. Will Warzone 2 have a sort of sunset window where it just turns off at a certain day and is no longer available? If that were to be the case, would the sunset window be 3 months, 6 months, another year? We don't really know. I mean, recently in the case of X-Defiant, the developers didn't even know. Ubisoft just told them, whoops.
Do you know what's wild with this? To my knowledge, aside from Warzone 1, I don't think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think Call of Duty has ever shut down servers for any of their games. I don't think. I could be wrong. You're going to have to double check my work on that, but
You're canceled, all that work you did on the next season is worthless, and something similar could happen here to Warzone. I don't know, maybe Warzone 2 just shuts down immediately as soon as the next Call of Duty game launches, but I gotta be honest, that seems unlikely. You're killing a part of your player base like that, even if the player base is mad at you. So if Verdansk fails, does that mean there is no Warzone 3? Or does that mean that all of Warzone is toast? As you can see, I'm kind of confused.
I see what he's saying there. He's saying, okay, is there going to be no new Warzone, or is there just going to be no Warzone?
Uncertainty here. I don't know what the future of the franchise is, and despite the recent wave of negativity on this channel, I do want to reiterate that the original Warzone was a top 3 Call of Duty experience for me. It was incredibly fun. I think they got a lot of things right. I do still have a soft spot for Blackout. I think Blackout was a little bit better, but Warzone 1 with the original Verdansk was also really fun. It was really high up.
Depends whether you like looting or not. If you like looting, you'll like Blackout more. If you like just running your loadouts, then you'll like Warzone more. It's that simple.
There. It had more longevity than Blackout, so I probably have more total good memories in the original Warzone than Blackout. That's to say, I loved the original, and I would love to see Call of Duty create a product of that quality at some point in the future. So I really do actually want Activision to succeed on this. I know the community sentiment is they want it to fail. It's actually kind of the sentiment with our government. They want it to fail so we can build something new. I rarely cheer for that. I want them to succeed. I want whatever version of Warzone is available.
Do you literally want them to, like, if you're a Call of Duty fan, like legitimately a fan of Call of Duty, you probably don't want it to fail. You just want them to make fixes.
To us, to stay available. And to just be awesome. I would love to go back to playing a really high quality Call of Duty Battle Royale. But I gotta tell you right now, the future is looking really uncertain for this sub-franchise. Or maybe I'm just worrying a little bit too much about something that is literally just a rumor. None of this has been announced by Activision. None of this is the gospel truth. None of this has been locked in. It's just a rumor from a leaker. Albeit a leaker who's often pretty accurate, who's on top of things.
He's been very right about a lot of things.
Attention from the entire community at least, but it is just a rumor. So I can't worry too much until it's confirmed. Guys, that's all for this short video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you...
I think it's, we are in one of those areas where this has happened before. This has happened before, and then they've knocked it out of the park, right? With Infinite Warfare. Call of Duty was in one of those years where like, we're screwed. Like this is the bottom of the barrel, which I actually have a video coming out potentially today about something to do with that. And we've been in positions like many times where we're like, this is the end of Call of Duty. This is it. And then they always just seem to pull something out of their butt. But like, I don't think that's going to be Black Ops 7. I think that's going to probably be Modern Warfare 4, and we're 2 years away from that. So we might be going through some rough times coming up here, but we'll see. I don't think we're in a situation where Call of Duty is quite literally making no money. They're struggling. They're struggling hard, real hard.